Okay, my initial gas tank prep was to use the rust remover and I flushed it out with water, and now I'm using a tank dryer to dry the tank out. Some people say you can use these tank dryers as hair dryers, but I'm not sure that's true. Okay, I just finished the zinc phosphate treatment, and that really did an amazing job. Before there was rust all across the bottom there, and I just used this KBS stuff here. Something you don't see every day, a gas tank on top of a wood stove. Not sure how safe that is if there's gas in it. Well, even though my crank is in there, I managed to step on it. I did the final step of the tank treatment, which is the, I don't know, epoxy liner of some sort. And then I took my top off to let it dry. And I wasn't thinking because there's a floating ring that's crimped on underneath here. There's 4 crimps. You can kind of see them there. And anyway, when I took the cover off and let it dry, the ring had slid down so that the holes weren't lined up. And that was a little bit of a struggle, but I managed to break it loose by getting a screwdriver between the ring and the gas tank here where I could. Broke it loose, and then of course I think some of the epoxy flowed into the threads, so then I had to tap it out, which I didn't really want to do to get garbage into the tank, but I put grease on the tap, and if I look down in the hole there, I don't see anything that fell in, so I think I'm okay. But the epoxy turned out pretty well. You can still see a few places where it's not perfectly covered, but in general it looks pretty good. The gas tank is painted, ready to go back in the car. The next task will be to fabricate a new fuel line from the fuel pump to the carb. And I use that inline filter just to be sure I don't get any junk in the carbs. The original fuel line is pretty bad shape, so I think I'm going to try to make a new one. The fitting that goes in here is not the standard compression for everything I've read and what I see on the old line. It's a little hard to tell, but so I ordered what I hope is the correct one from Moss, and we'll see if that'll work on my new version of this line. Okay, working on putting a hard line in from the fuel pump to the carburetor with this fill filter. I found a nice little issue on it. You see there, that's clearly the output of the filter, as is this side. So I'm having a hard time figuring out where the input is. Fuel line is done, subject to getting the right or the new fitting down there, but I think it turned out well. It's vertical there, parallel to the valve cover, just enough room to get the cover off, and then I have plumbed into my new fuel filter, which eventually I probably just remove once I just want to get anything that's stuck in the lines or in the tank as I put all this new stuff together. So when it clogs, I might just take it out. And then I used the compression fitting here, and it seems like it's going to work. So this guy I don't have quite tight yet, so it's drooping a hair, but then I have a piece of hose in here that's going to go under the clamp when I'm all done to keep it from wearing a hole in it like happened on these clamps I noticed when I took this guy apart. And then I think I'm going to bend a hard line all the way to here too and get rid of this hose, but that'll be a future project. Okay, I fitted a new anti-rattle rubber band like thing on there. The old one is not very rubbery anymore. It just breaks apart. Then I'm looking at the impedance range of the sensor here. And so when the tank's full, I can see 17 ohms. I've seen this, they're a little lower. And then when the tank's empty, I'm at 258 ohms. So it looks like this basically works. There's a few places where I can get it to be open. So it's probably dirty on this wiper on this pot, but I'm going to go with it for now. I have the new foam pads from Moss for the gas tank, and this one's good. But the one for the drain plug, it doesn't fit when you first get it, so you have to hack on it. It's kind of annoying, but at least it'll stay on while I put the tank in. Quite possibly the most miserable hour of my life getting this thing in. So the trouble is with this guy, the only way I could do it, well, it's aggravated by the fact that those pads I put in from Moss are too thick, because even once I did get it in, then it had lifted the tank up too high for the bolts to line up. I had a terrible time pushing down hard enough to get the bolts to line up. The top ones aren't too bad because this sill plate here will actually lift up if you pry on that, but that means there's no way to push down, so you really have to fill it with gas or do something to push down hard enough to compress the pads to get the bottom bolts to line up. But to get this tube in, I had to tip the tank back, and I first tried to put the tube in on the spigot and push it in, but there's actually a little tab they put here just to keep you from being able to do that. So then I put the hose in over here loose, which is a little tough. You got to squeeze it under here. And once it was under, I pushed the tank up, was able to lift the hose up and over the snout spigot here and get it on there. And then even getting those pads in is hard because they're so tight. You can't tape them on, and I didn't really want to glue them on, but I was finally able to tip the tank back out on one side, put the pad in, and then push the tank back on. And then I put one bolt on the side and I pulled this side out and got those guys in. But overall, not fun at all.